Welcome back to this month's Roundtable, your all-in-one comprehensive view of what's happening across the real estate industry, straight from some of the industry's earliest technology adopters and foremost experts in technology, institutional real estate, marketing, brokerage, government policy, capital construction. I'm Andreas, Senie. As always, this is a three-part show. Part one, introductions and what's new for each roundtable host. Part two, sector focus, where we unpack the past month's biggest news and paradigm shifts. Part three, what does all this mean for your real estate businesses and what can you do for the next 30 days to outpace your competition? Special thank you to our audience and to my co-host. This is our 100th episode. More on that in just a minute. Again, Andreas, Senie, founder, CRECollaborative, brokerage owner, commercial director, and technology growth strategist for both the nonprofit and for-profit industries. And joining me this month is none other than Dan Wagner, VP of Government Relations, Senior VP of Government Relations at the Inland Group of Companies. Dan, welcome back for our 100th episode.
It's an honor to be here. And of course, since we're so close to the holiday, I have my Santa Claus cup. So
we would be remiss if you didn't have the cup on. Excited to see the latest and greatest from Inland, and not to mention the decorations that you are now famous for. Also joining us, none other than Professor Darren Hayes, CEO of Code Detectors and professor at Pace University. Darren, nice to have you back with us. Hiding out from a holiday party, I imagine.
Yes, great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me again.
Of course, and certainly last, but certainly not least, none other than Saul, Klein, Realtor Emeritus, the part of the team that invented what is now Realtor.com, and I dare say my original co-host on this show, 100 episodes in. Is that a fair statement? I think it is. Saul, welcome back. Thank you all for joining. How are things in California? Forgive me, I'm tuning in with a cough, so I may cut out and they're just going to have to cover for me. I'm confident that the three of you can carry. So I'll go to you first, Saul, since I introduced you last. What's the latest and greatest for you here on our 100th episode?
It's hard to believe that this is 100 when you think about how long it takes to get to 100 when you're doing these types of programs. So congratulations, Andreas. You've done a great job in kind of keeping this together, keeping this rolling, and doing all the things you need to do to have a successful podcast. And all we have to do is show up, push the button, make sure we got the right link, right? And so, no, you've done a great job. But what's new and the latest and greatest, I don't know about the greatest, but on October 10th of this year, the governor of California, you won't mention his name, signed into law something known as AB 723, which was then incorporated into the Business and Professions Code, which is where the real estate law is in the state of California. And it has to do with publishing images. So Darren, this is right up your alley. So publishing images, and the law is basically if you publish an altered image, and of course you have to define altered, digitally altered versus enhanced, right?
Well, this is all our unfiltered selves for those tuning in.
So a digitally altered image, then you must also publish along with it, where it's easy for the consumer to find the unaltered image, and you can use a QR code or a link to it. Well, it sounds pretty easy to be able to do, but when you're looking at MLS systems, legacy systems, to be able to build in, we say, well, when the real estate licensee, the broker agent, when they upload an altered image, they have to designate it's an altered image. What happens then? Where do you put the unaltered image? And well, I say, well, it's simple. Just put it next to put the unaltered next to the altered image. Yeah, well, that works, except the way that people in the real estate industry typically work, they'll upload stuff and they move them around.
That's right.
And then if you move them around, how do you know which image goes with which? And so we have meetings every day here to talk about this. This is a consumer protection issue. And, it's in California. Other states are looking at it. We always say things start in California, then they move over to New York. And by the time they get to Ohio, they figure out that they're obsolete and illegal, and they look for a different solution to it. But right now we're dealing with that in California, trying to figure out how do we help our brokers and agents remain compliant with the law. because what happens at an MLS, we take those images, we take it with the data for the listing, and then we make it available to the portals and to IDX and VOW sites. So we have to be able to, and we're not the ones that are named to have to do this. The responsible party really are the brokers and the agents, but we're providing that information to the Zillows of the world, the Trulias, the Realtor.coms, the Homes.com. We have to help them identify which is the original image, which is the altered image, so that our brokers and agents are in compliance so that they don't risk their real estate licenses. So that's the latest here that we work on every day, because October 10th it was signed. It is effective January 1st.
Well, Saul, I'm so happy the governor helped you not be bored because you didn't have anything else to do. So this is great. You have something to do. This is terrific.
Well, the MLS are busy, certainly, and puffery and imagery. And, it's funny. I put into, I think it was Perplexity Pro. I had a client, we toured his building, and it was just full of junk. I said, let me try it. I took my picture, and I went into the AI tool, and I said, clean this up, keep the structure, remove all the boxes and the clutter. And a few tweaks later, I had a brand new looking space that actually was relatively accurate to what we were shooting, except for the mess and everything had cleaned over. And we put in for illustrative purposes, obviously, because if you walk in and it's a mess, it's a problem. And as far as the MLS, I can see that problem. It's not like there's a before and after. It's a big problem. It's a data problem.
Well, and you mentioned something very interesting, because the law is not that as definitive as you'd like it to be. And so what if you go in and clean up an image, and it's like you just take the clutter out, that you haven't changed the property, but you've digitally altered.
That's right.
Right? That's a digitally altered image. Oh, they don't mean those kind. Well, we can't speculate what they mean and what they don't mean. What's the intention of the law? What happens if somebody erases a couch that was in there? Well, no harm, no foul, didn't change the property, but you just digitally altered that image. What happens if you take a picture of it without it? I mean, there's like all kinds of variances and nuance to this very general kind of
Wouldn't
law.
this be a Darren thing? I mean, Darren, this, you're the IT, the technology guru here, right? What do you think of all this stuff?
So I know there is some case law involving, that AI generated pictures of children, for example, that can be used as evidence against somebody, even though it's not a real person. The intent is there to distribute, child images, for example. So, and there are ways of identifying what was generated by AI, for example. So there are laws that have been passed here in the UK and other countries to be able to prosecute people who share that kind of illegal imagery, for example.
Well, you said something interesting. So I remember with schools, fake essays or AI-driven essays, right? Responses. So there are tools in place that would identify if an image was created with AI. So to Saul, wouldn't the MLS simply flag it and say, here's the tool, here's the tech?
Oh, that's a good point.
So interesting. So there are, not that there aren't solutions to doing this. It's, can you build or integrate a solution between now and January 1st is the issue, right? And so, we could, ideally you'd say, well, with AI, we could identify, you don't even have to tell us, we could identify if it's an altered image, right? I mean, you have to integrate them into your technology stack. And how do you, in a short period of time? And Darren, you mentioned a real interesting thing. We don't allow photos with people in them. So you can't have people for just the reason you stated. Also, what if the person is a white person or a black person or a brown person? And so now maybe you're looking at fair housing kinds of issues.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so things you don't even think about when you think about, or pets. We don't allow animals. This is like, no, when you really start to think about it, you can really get into the weeds over the images that you disseminate for public display.
The corner cases are endless, right? And the safe harbor image laws, it's funny you bring up images specifically. For instance, CoStar, which is the behemoth in the commercial space, that's the closest thing to an MLS we have. the way they find and end up suing competitors who steal from them is through those images. And they actually will manipulate the size, put a pixel, 1 by 1 pixel in the image, and they'll tag it and they'll put it in their lawsuit. They'll also change the size of a building by 1 foot, and they'll see it get cloned. And when you talk about responsibility, as brokers, we feed those images in, and then we feed it to the next site, and the next site, and the next site. But if we go to CoStar first, then it's theirs, and they claim it to be theirs. So it's interesting to see how the MLS handled it. I know on our side, we are watermarking things, and more often than not, we're trying as brokers to house it and own it and not give it without explicit terms. But speaking of explicit terms and changes, and I'm going to pivot here before I have a coughing fit. Dan, I understand Inland has a new platform itself that's got to get caught up, or at least be forward facing.
Yes. So I'll take it away. So Inland is very excited. We have hired Lou Kruk. Lou Kruk is our new CEO of Inland Institutional. That is our new platform of institutional partners coming in. And the first project is a $250 million swath that we're going to be bringing in for self-storage. So we're building self-storage, and this self-storage company, we purchased Devon about 2 years ago. And so I think Inland now is like the 13th largest owner of self-storage in America. But one of the sweet spots of this, what we do is we go into like an old Kmart, and it's dark, and we go and build a indoor beautiful self-storage that's that has the climate control. You can drive your truck in there. So people are loving these. But the institutional area is new for us. So we're you have any type of pension fund or any group like that. So we'd come in and invest with what we're doing. So we have all these other areas. Our DST, our investment division, is still growing strong, and we're going to be purchasing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of product to be on the shelf for us in 2026. We have lots of investors. This is just another way to invest in commercial real estate through institutional companies in different areas. So we're real excited. Lou, he comes from the MetLife world, and he is a terrific person. I think he's just turning 50. He's ready to start a new career, going off kind of on his own in this leadership role. And we're excited for him to have this be the end part of a capstone of his career. So he was with, I think, MetLife for over 20 years, maybe 23 or 24. So we are real excited to have him on board, and we couldn't be more happy. So Inland is always doing new things and different things. We've, as you know, purchased land, property in every state except Alaska. We've managed these different properties, and we've had just billions and billions of dollars. I think we purchased $56 billion over our period of being in business for 57 years. And we're excited about going to this next level with Lou. So thank you, Andreas, for letting me give that plug in. I do now, if I could take a point of personal privilege to highlight that, as Saul, you kind of mentioned, this is our 100th show, and it is because of your sheer will, Andreas, that we have come on board. Like Saul said, I'm not organizing everybody like you are throughout the month. And you do that. You make sure that you're marking our metrics. There's a drum roll. What's our metric up to now?
So we've crossed 6,000 tune-ins and downloads monthly, which is incredible because by Google standards, that puts us in the top 10% of shows. Keep in mind, the top 5% is the hundreds of thousands of viewers. So while I'm very proud to be in the top 10%, there's a huge gap there, but it's wonderful. I mean, I've won business with this show. I've watched my co-hosts grow, and so has our audience, majority of our audience being 75% here in the States, and then across the world, including the UK, including Ireland, as well as Australia. We've got 2 people that tune in every month in Australia.
We love you, Australians.
Yeah. But So thank you for that, and thank you to our audience for making this. As I joke with people, I go, it's a real thing, and I love doing it. It's my favorite day of the month to get together with you and learn about what's happening on your side of the industry, because nowhere else can you find a candid conversation across every corner of the industry. And as brokers are growing their shares in capital, consulting, advisory, and recurring services, everybody's kind of tinkering and finding the new, what they're going to do best in 2026. We're hearing it first here from you guys. Saul at the MLS, Darren, cybersecurity, and also Pace University. Chris Abel, who couldn't make it on the construction side, Rebecca Carlson on the marketing side. And as I hesitate to say, to Saul's point, while AI will not replace anyone, it is getting more integrated in my day-to-day life. So we've had this argument now for years, and the adoption of AI, I mean, you can hear it throughout our show, and the pivots we've all made as business owners and in the verticals we command, right? So thank you guys for always tuning in and showing up and showing out, because the audience loves it. And they show up and show out.
And Andreas, could you give also a brief description in regards to our, we're on the panel. We have you're in Connecticut, right? So the other part I like is, we have across the whole spectrum of the United States.
That is, thank you. And all right, I will talk a bit about the show. So I am a network is net worth kind of guy, as is my industry. And luckily through networking, I've met each of you. And we now represent California, dare I say Ireland with Darren, but really New York, based in Cyber Detectives. Darren, you're there in Chicago. And this show actually originated, I was a guest, and this is a hat tip to Jim Freed, the longest South Florida business show. I was a regular guest of his, and I turned around and said, wait a minute, I want to be a regular guest. Matter of fact, I don't want to be guests. We want to be the same group of leaders talking every month. People will tune in for that, and they have. So we represent every side of this country with a global audience and deep expertise across the board. I mean, it's just that simple. So thank you for that. I have a coughing fit coming, so I'm going to.
Okay. So the other thing that is really cool as well is the longevity and experience that everybody has in their bailiwick. I mean, Darren, you might talk about your years of your experience, so people know what that is.
Yeah, so I mean, in 100 episodes, a lot has changed. I mean, now we're just talking about AI so much, and we certainly weren't talking about it that much, even just a few months ago. So, but things are rapidly changing. Somebody alerted me to some class action lawsuit just today, and they said, hey, 5 of my books were actually scraped, and they're part of a settlement. Anthropic AI. I don't know whether anybody's heard of it, but I looked up and I found that my book is part of the settlement now. And so if you have written a book, it may have been used by Anthropic in this part of this lawsuit. When you see these AI companies, they need some source information to build that test bed for people to ask questions, right? And so a lot of books were scraped and used. And so there's also OpenAI that they're discussing data that they pulled from pirated databases. So what's the legality of that? It seems like something has now been decided in court that just because something has been made public and been put out there in a pirated database doesn't mean that you can now just take it and use it to develop your own model or to provide that to others to answer their questions with a chatbot. So intellectual property is going to become more and more, there's going to be more and more litigious in terms of these AI models and the information that they're using. And that begs the question, if you took something from one of these AI models and you used it maybe to build your business or build I was looking at creating a security operations center here and using it to plan out that and then also create a logo and things like this. But how can I be sure that this logo isn't being used somewhere else, or this wasn't taken from some kind of pirated database, or some of the information that's used in my business report hasn't been taken? So that's a real concern of using AI, because it's not all just generated from nothing. It is coming from some of it from intellectual property.
That's a really good point. And you're right. This is like everything that everybody's talking about now. And when we started this show together, that wasn't the discussion points. So, and related to all of this, I know from a legislative standpoint, one of the areas that we've looked into and it's kind of coming around the country are when you talk AI, well, they have to have data centers in order to generate all of the power for these things. And so data centers are becoming, quickly a point of contention for some areas. I'm also a member of the Realtors Land Institute, besides being a part of, the Realtor National Association of Realtors. But you have in different areas of Illinois, you have some areas that are selling farmland, and it's going to sound crazy, for $150,000 an acre because they're going to be building a data center there. And then you have some local people that are saying, wait a second, you're going to put a data center up, then that means that our electric rates are going to go up because they're going to need all this power. And then you have environmental people concerned because of the water that's needed to cool all the components. So there's a lot of different things. I know in Illinois, if you wanted to look at investing in building a data center, our ComEd is our utility. I believe just to even have a conversation to start talking about this, because it's everybody is trying to jump into it. I think that they charge like $1 million or even more just to have a conversation. Like they're not wasting their time. If you are serious, you got to give them a check. So a lot of nuances all around the country with these data centers, and those are it's a moving target. There's locally here in Naperville, Illinois, there was talk that they were going to turn it down because of some of the local neighbors were getting upset, and they were going to have this really massive one in Naperville, and now they've had to scale it down. And so from a commercial real estate standpoint, that's a big deal, because you're buying the land. You have some of these old office buildings that you're buying for pennies on the dollar. But so you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to build this big data center. Now you're having to shrink it to work with the community. So it's a whole different nuance that's out there.
Well, it's an evolution, right? So it's supply and demand, and it is now its own category. We're talking about data and platforms. Data centers has become its own subcategory in the great world of commercial real estate. When I say subcategory, I mean industrial, office, land. These are categories. Subcategory being a data center.
Yeah,
it's
right.
incredible. And specialists there too. And Darren's being shy. So Darren is one of the top 10 cyber forensic specialists in the country. He came to me in my time of need when I was hacked. So thank you, Darren, for that. He's also a professor at Pace University, and quite a wonderful man to know, and a pleasure to be in business with you and to have you on the show, since he's being shy about it. And then add to that Saul Klein. And I always, I guess I don't say it enough publicly, but I laugh because internally and with my partner and wife, I look at the residential world, and the commercial world is following the path the residential world walked. And that path you helped create. Saul, who helped create what is now the MLS, what is now Realtor.com, the original Realtor Information Network. And now I'm out of words, Saul. You got to talk about yourself for a minute.
Saul, I'm going to mention about Saul real quick. Saul, you are a legend in this industry. You are a leader who has really helped to create our whole every real estate community, working for many years, and people in the association world really revere you. And I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite parts of it is part of working with you. So thank you, Saul, for everything you've done for our industry. You are a legend.
No, you guys are too kind. So I'm a great advocate for AI. Not because I don't believe that there could be things that take place that aren't in the best interest. I'm just a great advocate of it. And I was a great advocate of the internet when nobody was. And matter of fact, we named our company Internet Crusade because we believed that we were going to have to go out and say the same thing over and over and over again to convince people that the internet was where the future was. And we actually taught these seminars across the country called Getting Connected, which was taught you how to hook your computer up to a phone line so you could get on the internet and the World Wide Web. And so as I see AI, I just see just huge opportunities. And Darren, I think you mentioned just this very interesting point, is that while AI can create original works, the fact is that those original works come from information that could very well be copyrighted. And so I was in a conversation with one of my long-term partners, John Riley, who claims he's a recovering attorney. And we were talking about fair use, because that's something we need to think of. And, how much of this information comes from these sources where do you draw the line? Who draws the line as to what can be commercialized off of somebody else's concepts, ideas, books, because we don't know where it comes when the AI goes out and grabs it. So this idea of fair use, and particularly for real estate brokers and agents who are beginning to use AI in their business, need to brush up on fair use and potential obstacles and things that can get in the way. Now, having said that, again, I'm a great advocate for this, and I'm an advocate for more AI, right? And I understand the fact that it takes a lot of power and a lot of water, and we'll figure all that out as this kind of progresses. So, and there will be things that take place that we're not crazy about, but you know what? That happened with the internet as well. And it just takes time for all this to shake it. I remember when there was the first opportunity for us to have people charge things online, where we'd set up to sell product online. There were domains. You could buy yourname.com, yourteam.com. There was only one distributor of domains at the time. It was Network Solutions. And so we set up to sell that product to people and to take their credit cards online.
Yeah.
And we're like the first people in the country, probably in the world, to be able to do that. And Mike Barnett, one of my partners at the time, and I remember we were at the LA airport, and we got a call from our office because I don't remember the amount of money, and it wasn't a great amount, but the bank cut us off because we had gotten to the point where people had charged as much money as the bank was going to allow our customers to put on credit cards online, and we had to make all kinds of calls to get them to extend that limit so that people could buy our product, right? So it's an evolution, Andreas. You're absolutely right.
And Saul, the other thing is that I remember inland we were one of the top owners of grocery anchored shopping centers around the country, and at one time, and super involved with, we're still involved with the ICSC, International Council of Shopping Centers, and the big issue is how the government put the thumb on the scale for internet companies who are selling compared to brick and mortar. And so in some instances, like Home Depot, you could, they were having a price difference of 10% or more on gas grills. You could go on the internet and buy one and not pay the tax. And then you go to the store and you got to pay the tax. So that was hurting our brick and mortars. And so we were big advocates for the Main Street Fairness Act to make sure that when you buy anything online, you also have to charge the sales tax. And so that issue was solved by the Supreme Court. But that was something that, again, these issues that still have to be worked out. It's when you're talking about a nascent industry, there's always going to be some sort of legislative correction that has to take place, and it's there's always some shakeup. But it'll be interesting to see how this goes out. But you're right, AI is I love Copilot for Microsoft. It is such a great thing, and
which is well said, right? Copilot, because you're an institution and you have guardrails and rules, and Copilot black box. And I want to take this moment to now thank all the brokers who are putting their clients' financial models into ChatGPT and public sourcing it all for the rest of us who are smart enough to look, because I'm teaching this tomorrow on a continuing ed. There is misuse, and there's a lot of it. And it's not misuse. It's not, they don't mean to do it. It's not an inflammatory use. They're just doing it by accident. They don't know better. But there's, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say.
Got to interrupt. This is your world.
Do you think that there's? I mean, I could see tremendous opportunities from something like AI glasses, where somebody goes and they see a plot of land where they want to put an office building or they want to put a warehouse, and they can decide, about what are the electrical costs here. Can you scope out what the building might look like for me? Can you tell me what construction costs are in this area for this building? Those kinds of things, traffic. What's the traffic like in this area? Could you see that kind of potential for the real estate industry with
Not
AI?
only can I see it, it's happening now, right? So there's two schools of thought on glasses. Because you went that way. There's the audio only version, because when you talk about glasses, one of the concerns would be, and they exist today, and I won't name them, but you have the Jarvis Iron Man type. It records 24/7 and it's real time, and you can ask it to go back and tell you what you saw or what happened. But the people you're talking with and the things you're looking at, they haven't given you consent in many states, right? And then there's the other version, which even realities, where it's prompted by audio and conversational AI, and the applications are endless. But I go back to the age-old statement of garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know enough to know if it's wrong, you're going to be spouting the wrong things to everyone, and therein lies the problem. So it's funny you brought that up, because I've been looking into them. I will admit, AI answers my phone. It helps me read my emails. It takes notes on my meetings, but it's still not going to answer my client's questions.
Andreas, here's something that people are going to learn how to use AI. So most people don't even know how to use it. And once you start to get into it, you start thinking about the things it can help you with. And I'll give you kind of a real estate example. My wife and I have lived in the same house. She bought it in 1967 in San Diego. So we've been there a long time.
Born then, Saul.
Huh?
I was born
then? Oh, you were born then. It was a great year. Janie bought our house and you were born.
Yes.
And so we've been in this property for so long, and she's a gardener, and we have just amazing. It's like a botanical garden. But we're just kind of like hobbyists, right? So we don't know the names of the plants. And so the other day I thought, I'm going to take a picture of one of these plants and ask ChatGPT, what is this plant? And so it told me what the plant is. I took a picture of it. It told me this, and it gave me the background on it. So now I walk around the yard, and when I see a plant I like and I want to know what, I just say it's not a dangerous use of it. If it's wrong, it doesn't matter. But it's fascinating to me to be able to identify things like that. And so then there's all kinds of things you can do like that. And I use ChatGPT and a couple of other large language models to basically search for me.
Oh, yeah.
Just a new way to search for me.
Well, and whether you'd like it or not, most search engines are doing it, right? They've already switched you over to the AI model. Google is one of them.
It's phenomenal. I mean, I'm the, I think last time I told you guys, I'm the acting, besides being the chairman of the Illinois Chamber, I'm the acting CEO and president right now. And I'm having to go meet with the consul generals in Chicago. I just met with the Romanian consul general and the Taipei and Indonesian. And it's so wonderful. It's like having a staff person. I'm like, put a briefing together for me of, Russia or of Romania, and then boom, it's just everything's at my fingertips that before would take just possibly days to study and to research, and it's just like boom, right there. It's crazy.
It is incredible. If you can use it well, it's incredible. So I make that joke about the models, but let's take Inland, the vertically integrated company like Inland. If you had glasses and you had augmented reality in your glasses and you're looking over your portfolios, you would see, if you're doing a tour and you're the property manager, when the leases are expiring or what were issues and flags in real time. But to your point about meetings, I mean, I use, and I'll give a shout out to this company, I use Motion. And in the morning, I get a briefing of everybody I'm going to meet and who they are and what they've done. And in the evening, I get yelled at. And it tells me what I did wrong all day and what I did well all day. But it's incredibly helpful. And I still go back to my age-old saying, as long as you treat it like a day one intern. Because at the end of the day, it wants to sound smart. So if it doesn't know the answer, it's like a little kid using big words that it thinks go together. If you're not smart enough to know when it's wrong, it can be wrong in a big way.
Great point. Great point.
You can tell it it's wrong though, and then it'll apologize for being wrong, right?
There are actual studies that if you're abusive to it, if you're not nice to it, it'll give you worse responses. I've read something on it. But I mean,
I will tell you, this is another, just a point. So I'm on the board of the Three Fires Council Scouting America as a volunteer. And I want to get more kids off of the internet and off of AI and everything because they need to get into the nature and be out there and camping and know what it's like to get off of that stuff, because now it's so hard for kids to have these one-on-one interpersonal skills because of these things. So that's the other flip side of all this stuff as well. So we need to make sure to let kids be kids and and to have real relationships as opposed to these AI stuff too. So that's the other thing to worry about.
That's a huge point, right? And Darren brought up child misuse of AI with children, but I think today, and I go, wow, if I had AI when I was growing up and learning, and I had someone that could pace me like a runner in my education,
yeah,
probably, or maybe go further, faster than my peers. But all of a sudden, you're in an echo chamber of yourself and your AI partner. And Darren, you're in education. I mean, you're facing this on the daily, and that's a scary thought. You won't even know if someone's off the rails or where they're headed because they're not having human interaction. They're having fake interactions. And I think, Darren, I'm going to let you speak on that because your Pace University's got to be dealing with this day in, day out. The AI problem.
Yeah. We actually we've just launched an AI degree, and my son is going to go to college. I'm trying to encourage him to think about doing a degree like that because it's not locking yourself into technology as a career, but I think it'll apply to any kind of career that you ultimately take. He's interested in sports management, and I could just see this being used in a big way in different sports because analysis of games and predicting, that's really where the sweet spot is for AI. So I could see that happening there. But plagiarism, it's a big problem, but you can use AI to detect plagiarism. But a lot of it is actually quite obvious because when you see a student who's used AI, they will have references to books and writings that weren't used in the class, and there'll be a lot of extraneous information that was never mentioned whatsoever. And so you can really, it's really quite easy to spot because what you covered in a particular lecture, and when they start adding all this other stuff in, that this is not their work. But also, I also use a lot of proctored exams. So I do have, where you can't open any other browsers or you can't open any other applications. And that's a good way of preventing somebody from using an AI tool. So there is that. But it's still a problem overall. A lot of people are trying to encourage students to use AI, but use it in a more of a professional way, ethical way. Sometimes even asking AI to generate a report on something, and then the student has to go in and be able to critique and find out what's wrong with that report, which is kind of an interesting way. So, there is this argument about encouraging students to use AI more, but then being able to go in and edit it. So they're kind of learning the productive side of it, but also learning the ethical side of it as well.
Well, sure. I mean, in the classroom, yes, because that's ongoing interaction. So your students, but in the business world, if I haven't met someone and an offer comes in or a resume, now more than ever, real world interactions are paramount because what's coming across by email, there's no real way to know how authentic it is unless you know the person. So
yes. I mean, the other thing as well is, so there is a company that I know very well, and what they're doing is they're using AI to detect. I mentioned it on the show before, to detect the voices of kids who have been stolen by Russian forces in Ukraine. So a lot of kids have been stolen and are sex trafficked or sold on a black market. And so they're using this to scan across VK and other Russian social media to see if that child's voice will appear on the internet or a picture of that child, and they'll be alerted if that happens. But you could see other applications of that where maybe you might use that kind of technology to see if somebody's voice or picture appears across the internet, and see, kind of learn more about what that person is like, what they're posting across social media, kind of an advanced search. But there's ethical questions about that as well. You know, how much should you know about somebody's personal life if you're you know, thinking of hiring somebody?
So can I run this background check, but a more advanced one? Because in China, they have a person's, I forgot what it's called. Saul, you gave me the book or recommended the book. I've read about this in. It's not a credit score. Yeah, it's a person score, and who you hang out with impacts your score. And if you're rude in a restaurant and you don't tip, all these things go into it in real time, and it's incredibly invasive. But to your point, not just voice and identifying stressors. I think everyone hears that as language of sales training, mirroring. But take those AI glasses and have it tell you, hey, this person is interested. Those are buy signs, or they're stressed. I mean, there's so many applications.
Could an insurance company use that to see how much of a risk you are for life insurance or for travel insurance? What's this person's lifestyle like? So that's another application.
Removing the actuaries or becoming, because that's all data driven.
Sure.
Almost. Wow. The life score and invasiveness of AI. I just had this conversation with my partner in White. Because we now have Alexa in most rooms, and it's tuning in all the time, right? And listening all the time. And if we bring up something, there's the ad 10 minutes later, 2 minutes later on our TV. But used the wrong way, invasively, I'm sure it would know a lot about us. Then again, we have 100 episodes together. So the internet has a lot of...
One thing I would just mention is, before all this talk about AI chatbots and OpenAI and Copilot and all of this, there was a cybersecurity company that I met with before, and they actually assign a risk score to each employee based on the type of access that they have to certain data in the company. So if they have like personnel files or something, they have a higher risk score. But they also, if this person travels, and where do they travel? Do they travel to China or other countries? Their risk score goes up. But they also add into that things such as their personal life. So if this person was stopped for texting or DUI, that also feeds into that risk score. And also, if that person goes through a divorce, or they have a child in
positive or negative impact, but
that would be a negative, because they could be potentially compromised if they have a lot of debt from their university or from their kids' university, or they're paying alimony. And so there's this whole other ethical question about, can you really mix somebody outside the business and use that for, a risk metric for that employee?
So I met a company at CRETech, and they are in stealth mode, meaning they are going to go unnamed for now and until they're ready to announce to the world. But they are actually in real time, and Saul, you'll love this, grading and rating buildings. And what I mean by grading and rating buildings is, does that roof need to be replaced? When does that roof need to be replaced? How about the windows? How about the walk? All of the things that are costs and capital expenditures that impact the pricing of the building. And since Saul said it first, he was internet crusades, and dare I say, Inland may have been the first one to do a DST online. Maybe at least you created DSTs. Here we are, almost ready to rate and trade buildings. And this company is doing that. They started with roofs, and they've mapped the entire country, and they know when every roof needs to be replaced because of satellite imagery and AI predicting those roofs and so on. And I'm told that they can now go into the building and using the permits and the records, and they're grading. If they only had more access to data, CRECo.ai, shameless plug. But it's happening now. We're almost there. And AI is going to help.
Think about, Andreas, think about all the data Google has.
Oh, yeah.
And think about when you went shopping, before there was AI, even before there was computers, and all of the stuff you bought went through, and then you got coupons based on what you bought. And the grocery store knew what you bought, when you bought it, all this information, because you gladly tied it to your phone number so you could get a discount. So you exchanged information for a little cash, and we did that for years. So all this information is out there. So an author that shaped my thinking over the years was Alvin Toffler. And Alvin and Heidi Toffler, great author. And the first book I read was Future Shock. And it talked about how people were going to be shocked and this was like from the early 80s. And then the second book was Third Wave. And so Alvin Toffler said, look, there's 3 waves. The first wave was agriculture. And we went, and so then there was this revolution, and we went from agriculture to the Industrial Revolution, and that changed the world. And then we went from the Industrial Revolution to the Age of Information, and that was the third book that I read of his, which was Power Shift. Mm-hmm. And Power Shift talked about, I believe that the fourth wave is AI. And that AI will change the way human beings work and interact in ways we can't comprehend, just like we couldn't comprehend what the internet would do, just like we couldn't comprehend going from an agrarian society to an industrial society, what major changes would take place. And I believe AI is the next wave. And we're still in like the first inning, right? Like one down in the first inning.
Great point.
It's incredible because we've argued about this for years now, and here I am using it. And I was an adamant, no, I don't need it. We won't need it, but it makes my business and I faster and smarter when we integrate it without removing the human element, at least on my side. And I know the other institutions and other brokers are doing the same. Underwriting and analysis, doing scenarios for acquisition, what took weeks or months to underwrite now happens much faster because we can do all the grunt work in seconds. AI does it, but you still have to check it. But I go back to that. Speaking of that, I'm looking for the book here now. I don't see it there. So I'm going to come back on that. And I got a book for you, Saul. At the top of the hour, I'll get it to you. But speaking of, it's already almost the top of the hour. Here we are, the end of the year, 2025, in our 100th episode. What is the biggest piece of advice you could give our audience, the world, your sector, based on everything happening today and everything you plan on doing for Jan 1, 2026? Dan, you're to my right, in the Brady Box view of it all.
Well, it's very good. Thank you, Andreas. For me, coming from the political government world, it's always important to be aware of the trend of where you're planning to invest and planning to really put your dollars. You want to see what's the political climate like, and where do where's the best place for you to go, because as Saul just talked about in the very top of the beginning of this show, the politicians just all of a sudden do a law and boom, this is the way it is. Chicago, there's lots of things that happen that impact commercial real estate at a moment's notice, and you have to be aware of what's going on with politics is super important. And so I always encourage on this show that everybody get to know who is your member of Congress. You try to meet them and be aware of who their staff people are and become engaged, because that's what we have to do in this society.
So what I'm hearing there is don't ask ChatGPT to tell you what's relevant, no, hold on. That one's probably for Darren. Go ahead, Darren. And thank you for that, Dan.
Yep.
Darren, what's the biggest piece of advice you can give to everyone tuning in?
Yeah, I would just say on the cybersecurity front, even with AI, social engineering is still one of the biggest problems that we're dealing with, and people being convinced to give up personal information, whether it's by email, by phone, or otherwise. It's AI makes this easier for some people, and then just check what your profile is online. And I'm not talking about just doing a Google search. I'm talking about become familiar with these pirated databases and leaks about information, and see where your email address has been compromised, or your other accounts. There's lots and lots of different sources out there. So know about your profile. Order a credit report. We often forget about doing that. That will tell you a lot about what's going on. I think I heard a figure one time that as high as 40% of people's credit reports have inaccurate information, and some of that is related to identity theft. So it's free in New York. Maybe it's free in Illinois and California as well, and Connecticut. But do that. It's really important.
Well, if you apply somewhere and get turned down, they'll give it to you for free. But there are apps that'll give it to you for free as well, I believe. No, and thank you for that. It's just an incredible time as the industry evolves. And I will note, because we're on the cybersecurity subject, I'm seeing more and more of my colleagues have to send out emails that they've been breached. Right? They get their email hacked, and then they send an email. The bad actor sends an email. Here's an offer for such and such property, and it's got the right address and it looks legitimate. Only I know that I'm not expecting an offer. They've never seen said property, and I get on the phone, I call them, and I alert them, and 9 times out of 10 now it's, oh yeah, I've been hacked, and we're working on it. It's a crazy world, right? Sorry, I'm overly cautious thanks to your help, Darren. Years ago now, and I know the MLS is doing everything it can over in San Diego. I'm running through this quickly. So, Saul, what's the best piece of advice you can give to our audience? And it is a global audience.
Well, you ask that every week, and it's like you run out of things to say.
I don't think you've ever run out of advice.
This whole statement, it was like Thomas Duell. It's not true, but it was on the internet, so it must be true. Who was ran the patent office in 1890 or something, and he wanted to close the patent office because he said everything that can be invented has been invented. Now, that's not a true story, but it makes the point, right? And so I would say that AI is something that you need to stick your toe into. And it doesn't have to be about your business, like the example I gave where I take pictures of plants and flowers. But the more you start to use it just to help you to do things, not related to your business necessarily, you'll get to that. But just find ways to use it in your everyday life, and you will be amazed at the things that it can do. And that will give you more confidence to use it in new and different ways. And remember, we're still at 1 down in the first inning. And then something else. This book is an old book. I bought it years ago, but I went and got it again, got it out. You can't see it. It's data rights management. Data rights management. So you're putting all this information. Who's got the rights to that information? And so people don't pay any attention to this. And so start to think about, use AI in everyday ways, and be alerted to the fact that when you're putting information out there, particularly if you're in the real estate space, somebody is going to claim the rights to your information at some point in time. So just know about it. There's lots of information. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it about data rights management, and it will tell you all about managing data and data rights. And at the MLS, just to briefly, what you mentioned, Andreas, is that we know that people load images. Those images go to sites like Zillow and Google, or they go to different places, and then people can have access to those images, and then they can take that image, and then they can say, buy this property for $2, right? Buy this is the $1 million property. Buy this property for $10,000. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. It could be a stolen image that somebody then, right? Or it's for rent. All we want is your deposit money.
Oh yeah.
So meet us at the property. Here's the property. Meet us at the property. And we'll give you amazing rent on this property. So there's all this fraud that's taking place as well. So you need to be alerted to that. But don't let that stop you from playing with the technology. As an old friend of mine used to say, you've got this keyboard, hit every key. You paid for them. Okay? Learn how to use it.
real-time data in real estate is 30 days old. And as brokers, we input up-to-date daily data into our systems. And here at EAC, we use an unstructured database and couple it with CRECo and Notion and all these things because the data is valuable and we want to own our data. And I mentioned that early on in the show, as does Inland, as does Pace. I mean, everyone now has these guardrails on different data in different places, which is why I joke, when you upload that client portfolio analysis to ChatGPT instead of Copilot, you're giving me access to it because I know how to search for it, and so do others. So that is spot on. And I love if it's too good to be true, it is, because that really is the best advice you can give. AI
is the best. Saul is the best.
And I will parallel that with, Becca's not on for the marketing statement, but I've noticed a shift in commercials. And the one thing I think is it's AI has leveled the playing field in many instances. People that could afford giant budgets to do that underwriting, to do that marketing, they're all plugging into AI at the same price, and it's very little. So in that right, Saul, yeah, use every key because it's free today. May not be free tomorrow.
Or you paid for it.
Yes, and you paid for it actually. And this is my hat tip to NAR, Realtor property resource. Every realtor in the U.S. pays for that. Yeah. We love using it, and I love talking about it in continuing ed. And for those that don't know, Realtor property resource is probably one of the foremost technologies out there. It has a site selection process. It has the aggregate of some MLSs, depending on what you pay for. It's a robust tool that you pay for because you didn't read the terms and service as you pay your dues every year, which is my piece of advice. Read the terms of service in whatever you do, because I'll never forget Darren's advice to me way back when. You use Waze, you can't use Waze. It tracks and resells everything about you. Haven't you read the terms and service? Right? So thank you again for that. I want to again thank our audience tuning in on repeat. I want to thank my co-host. I want to give a shout out to Reagan Mendoza for making us look incredible while he was our producer. We do miss him. And I'm looking forward to an incredible 2026. Anyone who's fearful of the future just is looking at an excuse in my book. So again, thank you all for joining me. I hope our audience and my co-hosts have a fabulous New Year. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and the like. See you next month at the CRECo.ai Roundtable.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Roundtable, powered by CRECo.ai, your source for the latest in real estate and technology. For past episodes, sector interviews, and more great content, follow us on all social media and YouTube at CRECollaborative. You can also find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next Real Estate Roundtable.